And welcome back to a Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jono, and as always, my co-host, Chris, is here. And we're bringing you the Saturday morning episode. Instead of your cartoons, you should be tuning in to our starts and sits and our matchups for the weekend. We're going to go through the whole 1 o'clock slate, move on to the 4 o'clocks, and end with the prime time matchups this week to give you our advice on who we think should be playable in these games, who are sleepers possibly for a couple of these games if you have a flex possibility question, and people who we do not like in the matchups these week for various reasons, and we'll say why. Before we jump into that, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification button so you get all the videos as we drop them and notifications when we have our shorts that pop out, which do include little fun morsels of facts and information and advice. So use that as you may. We're going to jump into it. Chris, we're going to start.
Calling them little morsels made me uncomfortable, Jono.
Well, you know what? I just had a chocolate chip cookie, and it was a good morsel of chocolate in every single bite.
Fantastic.
Is that the proper way to use that?
Well, I took a glazed Krispy Kreme donut and put a stuffed Krispy Kreme donut on top of that, and then
that's way more than a morsel.
I mean, yeah, I'm not saying it was a morsel. I'm just telling you what I did.
Well, how about you give us some morsels here with this Jets-Patriots matchup?
Yum, 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 yum.
Your Jets here. I'll let you take the lead, but and give me your thoughts. But we got a sit with everybody but Garrett Wilson and the defense. And, give me your reasoning why here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, the Patriots defense, and especially in the run, is going to be tough. So Breece Hall, I would sit him and start other people over him. Zach Wilson, obviously, he's going to be a sit. Although, I know there's a lot of knocking on Zach Wilson. I thought he played actually pretty well through the first 3 quarters of that game. And then when the game was already out of control is when he threw the 3 interceptions. I'm going to give a pass against that elite defense that he had to face. But this is a real test. This is nut up or shut up time against the Patriots, who the Jets have been 0-14 in the last 14 games against. So I do actually think that the Jets do come out with a win in this game. And I do think it's going to be on the back of the defense. And I think we're going to see, like we've seen it in each of the last 2 weeks, right? Garrett Wilson makes one play, and it just amazes you. So Garrett Wilson, I think at this point, you have to start him, whether that's in a flex or as a wide receiver too. He's the target. Lazard has been targeted, but there's not enough volume there in the passing offense to really start anyone else at this point, unless Zach Wilson really takes it to the next level, which is like level 5 to level 4. Then I would say, yeah, we could consider starting other receivers or have them as sleepers, or even in the tight ends, getting them involved a little bit more. But until then, Garrett Wilson is going to be the only play on this team from a receiver standpoint. And like I said, with Breece Hall, the reason I have him as a sit is just because this Patriots defense is very, very good against the run.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with it here. I mean, if you're in a tight spot because of all the running back injuries out there and you are having to play someone like Breece Hall or Dalvin Cook, it's going to be a tough road, and they're a flex play at best, and that's rough if you got them in your RB2. I'd go out there and I would try and snag, someone like Tajay Spears if he's out there. Go snag Roschon Johnson, somebody who's still going to have a good snap percentage, but it's going to have a better opportunity because they're not facing this Patriots defense. And we're all in agreement, and Chris, I double your sentiment here that Garrett Wilson is a must start every single week, regardless of who the defense is, because he is the playmaker for this offense. And we all agree that he's no longer a wide receiver 1. He's going to have games, I think, this season where he'll put up wide receiver 1 numbers. But when you're thinking about starting him, you're starting him as your wide receiver 2. Because his floor is so much lower without Aaron Rodgers out there. And until we see Zach Wilson mature, which I think we have, he still kind of went, like you said, those 3 interceptions late at the end of the game kind of went back to his old ways. But I think we'll see a couple more growth opportunities throughout the season here, especially after some of these tougher matchups. So I like the picks. This defense you can't go wrong with. They're plug and play every single week. You could play them because they can go toe-to-toe with the best of them. Well, let's move on to the Patriots. And the thing about the Patriots here is they have had an 0-2 start for the first time since 2001, which was Belichick's second year. And I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure that was the year that Bledsoe ended up getting hurt and Tom Brady ended up coming in. So not to say that 0-2 is a bad thing, but it is amazing to see at this Belichick run that since 2001, they have not had an 0-2 start to the season. But it makes sense why they have had an 0-2 start. They've been a little bit more successful than they were on average last year, but not by much. Their defense is keeping them within the games, period. However, Ramondre Stevenson is a start here. He's a start every single week, doesn't matter who he's playing, because this guy is not only using the rushing game, but he's also using the receiving game. We have sits for Mac Jones against this tough pass defense. We have sits for Zeke Elliott because, to me, they're going to end up having to pass the ball a little bit more, and he hasn't been seeing much work outside of the running game and short yardage and goal line. Sit Juju because even without the article saying they don't know if they could trust him, I still think that Juju is one of the sub receivers on this offense. That's why we have Kendrick Bourne as a sleeper, because if anybody besides Hunter Henry, who's a start for us, is going to be catching touchdowns for this team, it's probably going to be Kendrick Bourne. And then we have the Patriots defense here, because if you're against Zach Wilson, turnovers are bound to happen. And so giving yourself a defense that could create turnovers, possibly get into the end zone with a touchdown themselves. I wouldn't even be surprised if each team has a pick six this game. It wouldn't surprise me.
Judon is probably going to have 3 sacks himself.
Yeah.
The offensive line for the Jets is struggling right now. So, yeah, that's another reason why Brees is a sit. But this defense should get after him. Yeah.
We'll move on to the next lineup in our slate, and we've got the Colts-Ravens. Colts here. We have Anthony Richardson as a start, but he has not cleared concussion protocol, so disregard that start. It's most likely going to be Gardner Minshew. I think he's officially out.
He's been ruled out.
So Gardner Minshew, so disregard our start here. You are not playing Deion Jackson. That guy has now found himself a nice, comfy, cozy, almost permanent position on the bench there, because Zach Moss came in and just absolutely dominated in touches and rushes. And so I think it's a good time to line up Zach Moss, especially without Anthony Richardson in here. And then Michael Pittman is a start for us, because Gardner Minshew, for those who haven't had a chance to watch him play or don't even watch the games when Anthony Richardson's not playing, Minshew actually has ability. He's shown it with every team he's played for, whether it be the Jaguars, the Eagles, and now the Colts. He's going to get the ball to big-time receivers. He may make some mistakes here and there, but he's a gamer, and I like him for that, so it doesn't make me downgrade Michael Pittman that much. But I'm not going to upgrade any other pass catchers there. And the Ravens here, I would say the Colts are a sneaky sleeper pick here. They are one of the tougher rush defenses out there, and they're going to force the Ravens to pass the ball. I have them as a sit because I don't see them in my top 12, but don't be surprised if they shut down this rushing offense, and it's going to have to be a Lamar Jackson kind of backyard football type of game, because they're going to have to make them. Yeah, I mean, just look what the Texans did to the Ravens week 1. They took away the run. I think the Colts are going to do the same thing. And if the Ravens pass well like they did last week, they're fine. And that's why we have the Colts as a sit. But expect the Colts to really make it harder for them on the run game.
Yeah. And then for the Ravens, obviously you're going to start Lamar Jackson. I think that Gus Edwards is a really good start this week. I think he's going to have the opportunity. He looked good. There's no Justice Hill. He's been ruled out. Odell Beckham has been ruled out. So I'm sitting Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews. Go ahead and fire those guys up into the starting position. I've seen a lot of hate this week on Zay Flowers, saying he's not a true wide receiver 1, and he's barely a flex play. It's he's the wide receiver 1 there. He is getting volume. He just hasn't scored the touchdowns that we last week. He didn't score the touchdown that everyone else kind of got involved. He's gonna have the touchdowns.
He's gonna have a touchdown this week. He's going to have one this week.
Yeah. And then the defense for the Ravens, I'm going to go ahead and start against Minshew. Although this is one that you could toss up in the air. But without Anthony Richardson, I do think that this is a good start for this defense. I don't trust the rest of this offense for the Colts very much. So the Ravens, go ahead and fire those guys up.
Yeah, the one thing about Zay Flowers and the hate he's getting too is people want to knock that, all his yardage came from one play, all this and all that. But that happens. Look at Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson had one big play last week, and nobody's
Oh,
dirting
people are
on
hating
Garrett.
on him too.
Yeah, but I mean, they're not giving him hate. I mean, look at plenty of other receivers out there. Look at back in the day for Odell Beckham Jr. when he was electric starting for the Giants. He would have that one big play up the middle and be gone. And that was the majority of his yardage. And then he probably had like 40 yards combined for the rest of that game over a course of 10 other targets. So it happens with these guys because they're facing the top coverages. And so they're not always going to be open every single play. They're not always going to be Justin Jefferson every single play or Tyreek Hill. Like there's only a few of those gems in the NFL here, period. Like look, even Jamar Chase is getting shut down like crazy. So
Shocker.
Yeah. So to me, at the end of the day, don't read into that Zay Flowers hate. We like him. Fire him up and be happy for it this week too, because I think he finds the end zone. So let's move on to the Titans and Browns. This is going to be an interesting matchup. It's two tough defenses against the run, and both offenses are run-heavy offenses. So they're going to make both quarterbacks throw. And to me, I am sitting Ryan Tannehill. We are starting Derrick Henry. And I know he's got a toe issue, so monitor that, but it looks like he should be good to go for Sunday. He has not been ruled out, but that makes me like Tajay Spears even a little bit more. So if you've got him sitting on your bench and you're flip-flopping players in your flex position or your second flex position, this is one that you may want to throw him out there in your flex because he's going to have more opportunities, I think, this week, and he's definitely going to have some passing opportunities, and so he should gobble up some big yardage because he is electric with the football in his hands. Outside of that, I'm not playing anybody. Not Chig, not Treylon Burks, not DeAndre Hopkins. I'm like, I don't want any part of them. And I don't even want to play this defense, even though they've been pretty good and they're the number one rush defense here. They'll probably end this week as the number one rush defense as well. But I think Deshaun Watson has a kind of a little bit of a coming out party here this week.
Yeah, I do too. So we'll move over to the Browns where we have Deshaun Watson as a start. Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt both as sits against, again, the tough rushing defense here. Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore both as starts. Peoples-Jones is a sit. Njoku as a sit. And then this defense as a start. Now, Njoku and Peoples-Jones, the volume just hasn't been there for them.
Yeah.
Njoku's been like targeted on these like short passes. They haven't really targeted him in the red zone too much. Which is surprising considering the last couple games of last season where he was one of the main targets for Deshaun Watson in the red zone. I do think that Stefanski decides to open up this passing offense a little bit more now that Nick Chubb is not there. I know everyone, the big waiver ad this week was Jerome Ford. I know Kareem Hunt, another big waiver ad just to kind of get a piece of this rushing offense, but they are not Nick Chubb. And even though this offense was revolved around the run, they do have capable weapons on the outside, and they do have a quarterback that does like to throw the ball. Now, the knock on Deshaun Watson is that he hasn't really been accurate this year. He's been, especially as like in the middle to deep routes, he has not been accurate. Now, that could change with the volume being dedicated to throwing the ball, which is why I think Amari Cooper is a great start this week. He looked really good. Elijah Moore, the way they started to utilize him when Nick Chubb went down, I really like his usage in this offense. So go ahead and fire those guys up, especially against this just Swiss cheese passing defense in the Tennessee Titans. This is going to be one where like Jono said, the strength of both these defenses in the stopping the run. But Cleveland has a really good defense in the secondary too, whereas the Tennessee Titans do not. So if I am an offensive coordinator, I'm going to target a weakness on that defense, and that weakness is throwing the football. And if you have weapons on the outside and you have guys that are capable of getting open, they're going to throw the ball more.
Yeah. I'd say the only thing about
and they just go trying to run the ball down their throats.
Well, the only thing I will say is the Tennessee Titans are a very good rush defense inside those tackles and the DNs, but they struggled. If you watch any of their games last year, especially Saquon Barkley and some of these other guys, when running backs bounced it to the outside on them, they struggled the most. They were not very good at containing when a running back would bounce them to the outside, because their cornerbacks and everybody, once they got to the next level, weren't great at stopping. So a lot of chunk plays come from there. I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns decide to change up the way they run the ball a little bit in plays and try and get outside of them, because Jerome Ford is quick. And the one thing I will say about Jerome Ford, we have him as a sit, and I picked him up in my league. I'm going to start him, but I'm in a position where it's Dameon Pierce or him. And right now, the opportunities are probably going to get to Jerome Ford, because he's going to have pass catching opportunities, because he did pretty well out the backfield this past Monday night. But the thing you got to also understand is, like, some of the people who got him and paid fab for him, you needed him desperately to the point where you are probably going to have to start him. So no, he's going to face an uphill battle. I mean, just look at Kelly last week, when they tried running him between the tackles. Now, obviously, when Kelly plays, they don't use him out the backfield like they do Eckler. I think they'll use him, Jerome Ford, more as a check down, and him out the backfield a little bit more than Kelly was used. But again, it's going to be a difficult game for Jerome Ford. He may not break 50 total rushing yards, even if he gets 16 carries. And for him to get in the end zone, it's probably going to have to be, on the 1 yard line, 2 yard line, or a swing pass out the backfield in the red zone for him to get in there. So don't expect a lot from him, but I understand for those out there, we're saying sit him, but you may be in a position where you can't sit him, and he's your best play. So, obviously, like, to me, I could play Dameon Pierce in a better matchup, but I don't think the way that offensive line is for Houston, it makes sense. I'd rather take the chance with Jerome Ford in a good offensive line and a better rush offense, even though they're playing a tougher defense. Yeah,
the sit is purely for matchup purposes. If you have to play him, go ahead and play him. It's just going to be a struggle. Like, if you're going to expect him to have the week that he had last week, you're not going to get that. Not against this rushing defense.
But he does have that home run ability, which I do like.
I mean, listen, let's be honest on, like, the totals from last season or the last week. All right, he had 69 yards on one play, and it was a freak play. He literally ran like 107 yards for 70 yards.
I know.
Where he had to basically change the course of the field. He gets a great block from Deshaun Watson, not a great block, but he got in the way. He got enough in the way, and he broke that off. Outside of that, did he really look that efficient? I mean, he had, another 15 carries and only for 30 or 40 yards. So he had the one big play. Yeah,
for about another 40 yards. So, but right. Yeah, I mean, he did have one giant play, and he probably, again, like.
So let's be honest and temper our expectations, because if you're looking at
he's not Nick Chubb, we know that.
Yeah. If you're looking at end of game stats, it's really deceiving, because you don't see the big play in there, and you don't see the efficiency beyond that. If you're just looking for yards per carry, that's not always an accurate number according to what actually happened in the game. So, listen, he's going to be a play just based on volume alone, and Chubb is going to come in and play in this game, unlike Akers, who will talk. Not Chubb, Hunt is going to.
I actually don't know if Hunt plays. I don't know if he suits up.
They came out today and said he's going to play. All right, at least he's going to suit up in that game. I don't know how many carries he's going to get, but he's going to suit up. Whereas they came out today with, like, Akers and said that they don't think he's ready with this offense on such short notice and the trade to suit up. So Hunt's going to go. I don't know. It could be 3 carries, right? It could be 15% of snaps. Like, it could be nothing. Jerome Ford could get it's just, this play is not that great against this defense.
No, he's got 2 other consecutive. We'll move on to the Broncos real quick. I know I'm showing them up here for you guys watching on YouTube, but he does have 2 other tough matchups coming up too as well. So temper your expectations. I think it's a long-term play for Jerome Ford, and it's his job to lose. So if you spend your fab on him, thumbs up to you, but it doesn't mean you're in the clear yet. Moving on to the Broncos versus the Dolphins. This is a matchup that I'm excited to kind of watch here. Right now, for the Broncos, we're starting Russell Wilson. He looked pretty good last week. Obviously, one came from a Hail Mary touchdown pass to really pad his stat line. That being said, it doesn't matter. He got sacked 7 times, I think, last game, or something like that by the Commanders, and still kept his team in the game. And Javonte Williams, we have him as a start here. He had the lion's share of carries, but barely took carries last week. So to me, I think you're playing both of them. You're not playing Jerry Jeudy. He did not look like he was ready to go. He looked a little rusty, so to speak. Samaje Perine didn't get opportunities that you're looking for in a play for him. But Cortland Sutton was open often for Russell, and they had a good rapport going there. Troutman was just lost. Like, they did not even target him, I don't think, last game. I thought it would have been a surefire, nice sleeper pick. I had him as a sleeper for us last week because Greg Dulcich is out. I thought it would fire up Troutman. He had 5 targets the week before, and 3 went to Dulcich after that too. So I'm like, wow, 8 targets week 1. He's going to have more than, at least 5 week 2. No. So... but this Denver Broncos defense against the Dolphins, we're saying start them. They are very good with their cornerbacks. They're good for their pass rush. I think they're going to get to this quarterback. They're going to cause some turnovers. Tua is not turnover proof, and he is sack capable. But I think at the end of the day, they're going to need to get here. They're going to need to create turnovers because otherwise the Dolphins are going to be able to high fly over, them pretty quickly, and it's going to be a long game.
Yeah. And then moving on to the Miami Dolphins, you're going to start Tua, even though he struggled last week. Actually, he didn't really struggle last week. He just didn't have the touchdowns because Raheem Mostert had the touchdowns. And that being said, you're going to start Raheem Mostert. Again, this is another tough matchup against a good defense. But we saw Brian Robinson Jr. be effective last week against them. I do think that the Broncos defense has a lot more to worry about in the Miami offense. And we'll get to, Tyreek Hill is going to be a start. We have Jalen Waddle as a sit, and that's only because he might not go. So this is something I'm going to you should keep your eye on tomorrow and then early Sunday morning. If he does go, I would go ahead and fire him up and start. If he doesn't go, I really like River Craycraft as a sleeper.
Yeah, I agree with you on Craycraft.
I think he was involved last week in the game. It's a guy that every year, he's kind of like the Trent Sherfield the position that from last year with the Dolphins. If Tyreek Hill or Waddle go down, then you're going to have those guys available. And Craycraft is involved. Durham Smythe, again, I think he's a start. If you're a pass catcher in this offense, the way the tight end position has been going this year, I do think he's going to have the opportunity against this defense to get open. I am going to sit this defense, though. The way Denver looked last week and kind of just shooting the ball out, they have capable receivers downfield. The Broncos looked a lot better in throwing the deep ball last week. And so Miami can be susceptible to that. So I'm going to go ahead and sit this defense.
The one thing I will say about the Waddle play too is everybody's like, well, if he comes in, is he going to play every single snap? Is he going to be 100% in there? He doesn't play 100% of the snaps anyway. They bring him in and out for packages, and he probably averages about 75% of the snaps on a game, sometimes less by the end of the game. But that doesn't matter because you play him for his big playability. He's 1 catch and gone. He's 4 catches for 90. It's like that's what you need from him. So even if he gets 4 catches for 90, he's still going to put himself in a good position. If he falls in the end zone, he's all of a sudden a top 15 wide receiver on the week. So right. Yeah, maybe they drop him down to like 65% of the snaps and don't put him in on some of these run plays and other plays. That's fine because when he's in there, he has a chance of catching the ball. Right. So let's move on to the next matchup. Bills Commanders. Chris will let us know too when we get to that 4 o'clock slot so that we can let you know. But we're still here on the 1 o'clocks. Bills versus Commanders. We got starting Josh Allen, James Cook. This is another one that's going to be a tough game for James Cook. You've got a very good Commanders rush defense. It could be a tough game for Josh Allen because they've got a very good pass rush. But we are sitting Damian Harris for that reason because it is a good rush defense. I think when they get into that red zone area, I think you're going to see them having to pass the ball rather than run the ball in. However, we are only starting Stephon Diggs out of our wide receivers. Gabe Davis, to me, it's just not enough volume. Not enough big plays and opportunities for him. Stephon Diggs is definitely the go-to guy there, volume-wise. Dalton Kincaid, I think he missed practice yesterday, possibly. So keep an eye on Kincaid's health there. It doesn't make Dawson Knox an automatic start. It makes him possibly a sleeper play just because of possible more target volume. But you are playing the Buffalo Bills defense because the Broncos defense last week showed what they could do to the Commanders when they pressure them. Yeah, they gave up points and they gave but they still cause plenty of turnovers, and that's what you're looking for in defenses. Turnovers give you points, so the more you can get, the better.
Yep, you're looking for sacks and turnovers. So going to the Washington Commanders, Sam Howell's after his week last week, he's going to be a start. Same with Brian Robinson. I think Brian Robinson is one of the hidden gems this year. I've seen a lot of things this week about he's a sell high candidate. He's a hold candidate. I don't know why you'd sell him on a year where every running back is either hurt, injured, or underperforming. You don't sell the guy that is the second best, third best running back in terms of fantasy.
Well, let me say one thing, because I did do a short on buy, hold, and sell, and he was my sell. But I did put a quick caveat. I did say if you have depth at the position, I think he's a good sell high because he's playing at his ceiling. But if you don't have depth at the position, do not get rid of him because he's still going to have plenty of opportunities. He's still the RB1 there. But I think he's playing at his ceiling with a RB14 and RB1 finish. I think you could get good value. If you've got depth and in need of another position, you can really, really play that value and steal from somebody who's in need of that running back. But again, you could also just hold on to the chips because running backs are not a dime a dozen in this league. We know that.
Yeah, he would be a hold for me. But you're going to sit Antonio Gibson. Again, throughout the first 2 weeks, he hasn't shown that he's involved enough in this offense to be a fantasy relevant starter. Terry McLaurin, I do think, is in line for a really good game. I'm going to go ahead and start him. I had to downgrade Jahan Dotson to a sit this week. He would be potentially my sleeper, but I've had him as a start the last 2 weeks, and he's just really disappointed. The way he's being utilized right now is not what we thought coming into the season. And I'm going to have like a show me week before I really put him back as a starter. Curtis Samuel, sit. Logan Thomas is a sit for me, even though I do like him and I do like this matchup for him. And then the Commanders defense, I think I am going to sit. I do think that this Bills offense is good enough. I think that they're going to get points. So, they might have some sacks and some turnovers. They can get after Josh Allen. Josh Allen can be reckless with the football. But I just don't think they're going to have enough sacks and enough turnovers to make up for the amount of points that they're going to let up.
This game could go kind of like how that Jacksonville Chiefs game went last week. Very under and defensively. I have the Washington defense in our league, and I've held on to him and not switched him out for somebody on a streamer because they have 10 sacks in 2 games, and they can get after. And the second game was 7 sacks because Chase Young played his first game last game against Denver, and they were electric. So we know what happens when they try and rush. When Josh Allen tries to rush, he makes mistakes. Not rush in terms of running with the ball, but rush his passes, can make mistakes. It's a good defense. We may not have 12 defenses on here that we're saying start. So this is one of those ones that Chris and I are both kind of on the fence with. Like, there's going to have to be 12 defenses somebody starts in this league because you have to start a defense in your league unless you're one of those that doesn't have it. So this could be one of those teams that could finish inside the top 12 because they're good. They're just facing a tough opponent. So, All right, let's move on to the Falcons versus the Lions. Falcons, we're doing it again this week, exactly how we had it last week. Even though Drake London kind of had a little bit of a glow-up game with that touchdown, we are still only suggesting to start the running backs. They are the prime, tried and true gems of this offense. You know what you're going to get out of them. You throw Jake London out there, he could have another terrible dud game. Kyle Pitts, you could throw him out there. He could have 100 yards and a touchdown all of a sudden. This could be his, first big game of the season. But he could also be Kyle Pitts to see what he's been doing, which has been more of the armpit, pun intended, of the Atlanta Falcons. So that's Dallas, maybe when his rookie contract's up. Don't forget he does have his 5th-year option. I don't think the Falcons are getting rid of him. But that being said, listen, we understand if you have Drake London and you have some injuries, because there's a ton of them, he is a flex play to me right now still. He wide receiver 2 at best, but it's a low wide receiver 2 because he hasn't shown consistency between the past 2 seasons for me to feel comfortable as a locked-in position there. So I get it if you have to start him. It's not a bad start. It could be a game where that they could go down a little bit, but this defense has been keeping games very competitive. So I expect them to use the running game to try and run out the clock and keep it out of Goff's hands. So
yeah, I do think Bijan and Algier are in lines for really big games here. I think so. Detroit's offensive line is banged up, and they're going to be without some starters. And so I don't think that they're going to be like, this isn't one of those games where Atlanta is going to get behind in. And we saw in week 1 against Carolina where they're in the game, they're going to focus on the run, right? Week 2, they got behind, and now they had to pass the ball. So this is why all of our pass catchers in that offense are going to be sits. I actually think they're going to be in this game a lot more against Detroit. And I do think that this defense is susceptible to running the football, and Bijan, Algier, and this running back tandem, I think, is in line for really big days. I think the people that drafted Bijan in the first round and in the first couple picks, this is going to be a week where you're going to be like, "Ha, I told you so. He's so great."
I don't know. I mean, Algier's getting his.
I know.
I don't think we see that until the end of the season, and then you guys can prove us wrong.
I think Bijan's going to have one of those games this week. I think Algier could also have a really good game this week, but I think Bijan is going to have his first true explosive game where he's going to be a top 5 RB finish on the week. So if we want to move on to the Detroit Lions, we got Jared Goff as a start. David Montgomery's out in this game, or he's doubtful in this game.
He's doubtful. You can pretty much consider him out.
Yeah, and Jahmyr Gibbs, I would say fire him up. I think this is going to be a game where Gibbs has a lot of carries and a lot of usage. Even though we were disappointed by when Montgomery went down last week, what kind of usage Jahmyr Gibbs got. But I do think this is a week where Jahmyr Gibbs gets a lot more involved. Amon-Ra St. Brown, again, he's nursing a turf toe injury. He is expected to play. He's still questionable, but they're expecting him to play. Marvin Jones is going to be a sit. Josh Reynolds moves up out of the sleeper. I love his projections for us. He's a sit week 1, the sleeper week 2, full on start week
that's because
3.
we had Marvin Jones being the role that he's playing, and he had his opportunity, like we said, week 1, and I think we could have been right in that had he caught some balls and not coughed it up. But Josh Reynolds has been just consistent.
Yeah, he's been great. He's been great thus far. I know he's a big waiver target this week, so go ahead and fire him up. He's a good matchup this week against Atlanta, and then Sam Laporta, go ahead and start. And this defense, I would sit. And again, I just think that they're going to get it's going to be a slower pace.
Well, CJ Gardner-Johnson's out. I mean, torn pec. So for the season, that was probably that was their best defensive player, in my opinion.
Aiden Hutchinson?
Dude, CJ Gardner-Johnson was all over the field. Turnover creation. Hutchinson's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But the more plays that CJ's involved in, I think it's going to hurt them the most.
Oh yeah, I do. I think he's great up in the run as a physical presence there, and that's why I think Bijan is in line for having those explosive plays downfield. I think that Bijan actually breaks one off in this game for a long touchdown run. So I'm sitting this defense.
Yeah, I do like the Jahmyr Gibbs start. I think this is one where he gets a lot more opportunities. Now let's not forget, Dave Montgomery left the game with an injury. And everybody's like, oh, why didn't they just flood it to Gibbs? Well, that wasn't the game plan. That wasn't the packages they were ready for. So why throw your rookie out there in a comfortable situation? So why not give it to a guy, Craig Reynolds, who was backing up and knows what he's doing. He's been there before. He played for them last year. So now you've had a whole week of Jahmyr Gibbs practicing to be the main guy here and probably get the majority touches. I think you'll see a different game plan from the Lions here, especially with Amon-Ra. For those who don't know what turf toe is, I don't want to go into the details now. Look it up. Let's just say if you're a 350-pound lineman and you have turf toe, you're not going to be able to push over a 150-pound person very easily using your legs. You have no leverage at that point. So think about the quick movements of Amon-Ra and the cuts. They had to put a plate in his shoe last week, and he lost a step because of that. So, I mean, who knows? Jahmyr Gibbs may end up becoming more of a receiver in this game too, in the intermediate routes. But
I'd say even the sleeper in this game is Khalif Raymond. We don't have him listed here, but I would say he's a good sleeper for this week, especially if Amon-Ra is limited. That Khalif Raymond, I do think, is going to be a next guy up, and we saw him produce last week when Amon-Ra went down.
So let's move on to the Packers and Jordan Love. Jordan Love's team here. He's doing a fantastic job so far. For those who picked him up off waivers early or happened to draft him, you kind of struck gold a little bit here, green and gold to be exact. And to me, we're starting Jordan Love here. Aaron Jones has been practicing in limited fashion, so we have him as a start. That start is the caveat is he's got to play. If he plays, we're starting him because it means they feel good enough because A.J. Dillon is a sit for us even if Aaron Jones does not start. Dillon has not proved to be effective enough to feel comfortable to start. I get it. If you're in a position where you've lost running backs or you happen to be the Jonathan Taylor owner and maybe you own Eckler as well and you're sitting there and you got to throw somebody out there, you got to put A.J. Dillon in, start him. I mean, he's going to get volume if Jones isn't in there, even if Jones is, but you don't like it. We have Jaden Reed as a sleeper because his 2 touchdowns last week in the red zone was fantastic. Romeo Doubs is a start. Christian Watson did practice in limited fashion. I don't know if he had a full practice today or not. I forgot to look at the report. But that being said, we know how Christian Watson is. He's fast. He's athletic. And that hamstring could go at any time again. Romeo Doubs has shown the rapport with Jordan Love. He's been a good outlet. In that final drive of that game last week, he went to Doubs 3 times. They had great coverage out there in Atlanta, so it was tough. However, I see him still being the go-to guy. And like I said, preseason, he's going to lead the team in receptions this year, in my opinion. He's just surefire, sure-handed guy. He's just not as explosive as Christian Watson is. So,
yeah, we talked about in our waiver episode about Jaden Reed, and the reason we liked him so much is how they're scheming the ball to him. So even if Christian Watson comes back, I don't think it's going to affect Jaden Reed as much because they're trying to get him the ball as much as they can. And whether it's on these shuffle passes, on like a jet sweep pass, out of the backfield, on the kind of pick plays on the outside. I do like him as a really good sleeper this week. And then moving on to
well, let me do a quick say about Jaden Reed. The reason why I think he was so successful last week is they were without Aaron Jones. So a lot of those routes out into the flat that he caught both for touchdowns, that's an Aaron Jones special, out the backfield like that or coming across. So I like him still this week, even if Aaron Jones plays, because I think they're going to limit him to a certain type of gameplay and running the ball and not necessarily have him out there for as many snaps. But when Aaron Jones is fully healthy, I want to see if they decide, if they still scheme him the same way, because that's what I was saying to myself. I'm like, man, he's just doing exactly what Aaron Jones was doing them from before, catching out in the flat, turning up the field and getting chunk yardage on mismatches. So keep an eye out for that. But this game in particular, because you still have a question mark at Aaron Jones and Christian Watson, I'm firing Jaden Reed up as a sleeper and a flex play to me.
Yeah. And then moving on to the Saints, Derek Carr, he's going to be a sit for us. Jamal Williams, still nursing that injury. He left last week's game. He's going to be a sit. Tony Jones Jr. came in. I know a lot of people are saying Kendre Miller is going to get a lot of volume this week, but we'll see how the usage there. Either way, I'm probably going to sit either one of them.
I'm going to sit both of them too.
Yeah, I just don't like the plays. And then next week, Kamara is coming back.
This backfield is just disappointing to me to start with Jamal Williams. Their offensive line just hasn't looked good run blocking at all. Yeah. So until we see what Kamara does, I'm not starting any of these running backs. Like, again, unless you have to. Yeah.
Olave is actually going to be a sit for me this week. I think Michael Thomas is going to be a start. Rashid Shaheed, he's probably going to be sleeper or start status for me all year. Because again, he can go off at any time. I love his usage in this offense. It's just the games he doesn't score in, he's going to probably sit around the 50, 60 yard mark. But he can go off at any time. He's one of those guys that you get the ball in his hands and he's a touchdown.
He's almost always open.
He is. It's fantastic, and the way Derek Carr utilizes him downfield is great. Juwan Johnson and Taysom Hill are going to be sits for me. Although I have a sneaking suspicion that, every season we have like 1 or 2 Taysom Hill games. And I have a sneaky suspicion that this might be it.
Well, so if people looking at the graphics, you'll see I put Olave as a start. Chris has him as a sit. I switched him to a start, but with a caveat here is Jair Alexander is probably going to be on him the whole game, so it's going to be a difficult matchup. But yep. I'm putting my money on this young receiver and Derek Carr. Derek Carr has zero care of who is covering who. He's going to throw the ball up at any time.
It's true.
So that's the only thing I like about it. And then I'm agreeing with you what you were about to say about Taysom Hill. I switched him to a sleeper here.
Yeah.
Because there's an opportunity.
It's just I just have a sneaky suspicion that this is a Taysom Hill week.
Yeah, I do too.
And he got picked up today in our league, and I was like, you son of a biscuit. But I wasn't going to start him anyway. But like I think that this is the week where Taysom Hill has one of those weeks where.
If you're streaming tight ends, like to me, he's one of the ones that I'm more intrigued about trying to stream this week because he had 7 rushes last week.
Yeah.
After Jamal Williams came out, he started rushing the ball more. Just because Kendra Miller comes back doesn't mean he's not going to run the ball now. I think he's going to run plenty of times here. And because I also think this is going to be a tougher matchup than we have the Saints as a start defense. Again, I forgot to count out to see how many starts we suggested for defenses, but you could almost say that the Green Bay Packers are a start here too as well, because Derek Carr turns the ball over. They have had a tough time running the ball. It may be a low-scoring game, or the team that wins is going to be the one that gives up a bomb is the one that loses, and the one that wins is the one that connects the dots a couple more times in deep passes, because it's going to be a rough and tough game. I think the Green Bay Packers are the team that probably ends up winning it if they have a full healthy Aaron Jones and if they end up getting Christian Watson. If they don't, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup here.
I believe it's in Lambeau too, so we all know the splits on the Saints defense away from home. So that's a reason I don't kind of like that matchup for them, but it's a decent matchup enough to where if that's your defense, go ahead and play them.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Texans and Jaguars. Let's keep this train rolling here. This one is going to be interesting because the turnout and the final scoring for these games in the past were not what you expected, especially last year. Trevor Lawrence threw 0 touchdown passes against the Houston Texans last year. Now, that being said, Houston Texans were one of the best against the pass last year because they do have decent corners, but teams didn't have to pass the ball on them. They ran the ball on them because their rush defense was so terrible that passing attempts were the lowest and yardage was the lowest just because of that. So but they also, I think, turned over Trevor Lawrence a couple times. So to me here, we have a sleeper in C.J. Stroud. He's been playing phenomenal. They're going to be playing from behind is what we're suggesting here. He's thrown for over 200 yards both times. He hasn't turned the ball over himself. He's been pretty good with it. So look for him to continue, which is why Nico Collins is a must start for us in this offense because he is the alpha receiver here. Tank Dell's still a sleeper. We like him. We want to see if he can have a repeat performance. I'd even say Robert Woods is a sleeper because that guy has had, I think it's 17 targets or 16 targets in 2 games, something like that for Robert Woods. So I think he's had about 10 receptions too on it. Both receivers have been flying. They have barely ran the ball, which is why Dameon Pierce is a sit for us. Singletary's a sit. He's an afterthought anyway, even though Dameon Pierce is only for 40. He's out anyway. Yeah. Yep. Dameon Pierce is 45% of rushing attempts and stuff in this game, or snaps, I mean, in the past couple games. But that's because they've completely went away from the run and abandoned the run. I think it's going to be another game where they may do it, although Dameon Pierce had some great games against Jacksonville last year. Everybody could go and look at the Dameon Pierce 2022 highlight reel, and you'll see that rumbling, tumbling towards the end zone run where he was breaking tackles left and right, Lynch style.
You got to at least do it with a Chris Berman accent.
Yeah, well, you either don't do it with a Chris Berman accent or you better do it in a good Chris Berman accent.
No, you always gotta make the attempt. It's about the attempt, Jono.
All right. Dalton Schultz is a sit. Houston Texans defense is a sit, even though they have dominated this matchup over the past season. I still think the Jaguars showed last week, and Trevor Lawrence kind of had a down week too. I think he has a bounce back week here, and I think they don't have that many problems against this Houston Texans team.
Yeah, and then moving on to the Jacksonville Jaguars, I really wanted to just light the whole screen green.
We pretty much did, except for Zay Jones.
Yeah, I mean that's why I chose one of the receivers. Obviously I can't say start them all. I mean I could, but I do think the way they performed last week against Kansas City, that offense looked poor, and they're going to come out and they're going to just absolutely dominate on offense. So I do think Trevor Lawrence is in for a big game. ETN's in for a big game. Excuse me, Tank Bigsby, I think, is going to be a sleeper here, depending on his usage. The first week he looked great. The usage was great. Last week, almost nothing. And so I can't put him as a start yet. He's still going to be a sleeper for me. But especially with all the injuries at running back, I do think if you needed to throw in a sleeper this week, this is a good matchup for it. Calvin Ridley, go ahead and start, fire him up. Christian Kirk, one of these weeks we're going to be right on him. I promise.
Well, I think this is one with Zay Jones dealing with a knee injury, regardless if he plays or not. I think he may even be limited. Christian Kirk is the one to go here.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram's looked great so far through 2 weeks as a pass catcher. The volume has been great for him. I really like him as a start this week at the tight end position, and then the defense we have as a start as well against this offense.
One thing quick about Dameon Pierce and this Texans rush offense. Don't forget that pretty much the whole offensive line is injured right now, and they haven't the starting line. And so it's making it even more difficult for them to run the ball. He's a good running back. He has more yards after the contact than he has rushing yards. Think about that. He's being hit behind the line of scrimmage and making it back to the line of scrimmage constantly. So
if you guys don't know, Jono is a Dameon Pierce owner.
Oh, so I know these stats here. I'm not starting him this week. I understand if you have to start him, you're not starting him confidently, but you're starting him saying this could be his game. I don't think it's going to be that way. It wouldn't surprise me if it is the way he runs the ball. He runs tough, but they haven't been giving him enough opportunities.
This could be our year.
No, I'm not saying it's going to be his game. I'm sitting him. I'm playing Jerome Ford over him, like I said. But just so you know, moving forward with Dameon Pierce, I think there's brighter pastures ahead. He's going to have an opportunity later on this season. I just don't feel confident until that offensive line gets heavy and they could actually start running the ball. Because that's the only way that the Texans are actually going to start winning games, because you can't just throw the ball the whole time and expect to win games here, because your team's still giving up plays, so you have no clock possession. But let's move on to our next and probably most exciting matchup, Chargers-Vikings.
Chargers-Vikings.
So we got Justin Herbert as a start here. Anybody facing the Vikings right now or the Eagles is going to be a start. But you could say the same thing about the Chargers. We are sitting Austin Eckler because he's out. He's not playing again for a second straight week. Womp womp. I happen to be on the side of the womp womps as an owner of Austin Eckler.
But there's no injury designation.
There wasn't. Now they're saying there's no timetable for his return. I think honestly at the end of the day, he probably feels pretty good. And they just want to hold them off another week in a situation where they feel confident in Josh Kelly. And you should feel confident starting Josh Kelly in a Swiss cheese of an offense that the Vikings are right now. You are firing up Keenan Allen, absolutely, and you're firing up Mike Williams. I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Williams is the one with 2 touchdowns this week. Keenan Allen, he had most targets last week for Chargers receivers. Keenan Allen was the recipient of both touchdowns. That could change. Josh Palmer actually looked pretty good last week too. You're sitting Quentin Johnston. He still hasn't had the breakout opportunities. He has that. And like we said, preseason, he's probably going to need an injury for that to happen. And you're sitting Gerald Everett. I just don't think there's enough mouths. There's enough food to feed these mouths here. I think to me, Gerald Everett is the odd man out. Although I did notice that they did target him a little bit more and go to him a tiny bit more with the fact that they weren't going to Josh Kelly like they normally do Eckler. So that is something to take a look at, but you still have Donald Parham that keeps going out there, whether he's healthy or not now. Right. And then the Chargers defense, you're not starting them with confidence because you are facing the QB1 in fantasy right now.
Yeah. I mean, you can go ahead and start. You're going to get probably 6 or 7 sacks, but you're going to probably let up 30 points. So that's the caveat there. And then we'll move on to the Vikings. This is a great matchup. This is my matchup that I'm going to sit and have on the main screen. I really like this one. There's going to be a lot of scoring back and forth. And I do have shares in both Josh Kelly and Justin Jefferson. I can't do the gritty. Otherwise, I would try.
I told him if he wins the league this year, I was prepping to do it last year if I beat Chris in the championship, which I didn't. But if Chris wins the championship again this year, which our entire league is fighting for that to not happen, I told him he needs to learn how to do the gritty, and he films a whole little championship victory video and sending it out there.
Maybe if we get to 1,000 subs, I will post a video of me doing the gritty. I will go in the backyard. We have a nice little gator in our back pond. I will find him and I will try to do a gritty around him. All right. But moving on to the Vikings, Kirk Cousins, go ahead and start him. Yeah, he's going to get sacked a bunch. Yeah, they might lose this game, but I don't care because he's throwing 350 and 2 or 3 touchdowns every game. Madison and Cam Akers. So here's the big news of the week is Cam Akers got traded. It's unlikely he's going to suit up and play. They said it's just too short of a week. He doesn't, he's not going to get this offense under his belt. So
you're not playing him anyway.
I'm not playing him either way. I mean,
I'm not playing Madison. I mean, this offensive line is hurt right now. I think they're getting
bad rushing offense.
Yeah, well, they are getting back one of their linemen, but I think they're without their center. I think they're getting their left tackle back, but still.
So that being said, JJ shoot him up. Jordan Addison, he's now again 2 weeks in a row. Go ahead and start him. He's a consistent. He is the number 2 here, and he's been a consistent target down the field. KJ Osborne is a sleeper this week. TJ Hawkinson's a start, and please, for the love of God, sit this defense.
All right, let's move on. I think we're in the 4 o'clock games now. Panthers Seahawks. Here, the Panthers, you're sitting Bryce Young because he's not playing. Andy Dalton is going to be the quarterback here. But I think that actually benefits some of these veteran receivers in a good way.
I think that's a really good sleeper. I did a short on him today. I think he's a good sleeper for this week. If you are struggling at the quarterback position, if you're an Anthony Richardson owner, and he just got declared out today, and Baker Mayfield's gone, Andy Dalton could be a really good play this week.
In fact, 2 weeks. I think he's going to be playing for 2 weeks now. I think he may bring a little level of the maturity, obviously, and the experience that Bryce Young didn't have in decision making out there. So he's going to see the open Thielens, he's going to see the open Charks, and I think that's going to help out these receivers. You're playing Miles Sanders this week because just the position itself. Yeah, they're playing the Seahawks, and the Seahawks haven't been that great here and there, but the position at the running back spot is so bad. And been so tough. Miles Sanders is a start every week no matter what. Adam Thielen right now is a start for us because he looked great last week getting open and helping extend plays for Bryce Young. I think Andy Dalton is going to be quicker to make decisions because he doesn't have the running ability, so he can't lean on that anymore. So he's got an internal time clock going. DJ Chark, Jonathan Mingo are sits. Chark didn't get enough opportunities. I don't know if he played enough snaps last week coming off his injury. And Jonathan Mingo still looks like a rookie receiver. So I think Thielen's the benefactor there. But Hayden Hurst, don't be surprised if he sneaks up into this start position. He's a good sneaky flyer and streamer option because I think Andy Dalton will be able to find him the ball a little bit more often. But you are not starting this Panthers defense.
Yeah, for DFS play, I love Hayden Hurst this week. I think Andy Dalton has loved throwing to his tight ends in the past. This is a really good – he's going to want to get the ball out quick, so he's going to look for those matchups. Hayden Hurst, Adam Thielen, I think, are going to be the recipients of a better volume down the field. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mingo or Chark did have pretty decent games as well. I just don't trust either one of them right now to start either one. And I think that, especially at the wide receiver position, how deep it is, there's better matchups to play. I don't need to start a guy with Andy Dalton throwing in the ball.
And most people probably don't even have DJ Chark on their teams, to be honest with you.
Right.
Let's move on to the Seahawks here.
So Geno Smith is going to be a start. Kenneth Walker is going to be a start. Charbonnet, again, we need to see something from him. He's going to be a sit for us. DK Metcalf, he's going to be a start. Lockett's going to be a start. JSN, sit. and then the tight ends sit, but I am going to start this defense.
Yeah.
So
because Andy Dalton loves throwing interceptions. We know that.
So everything I just said about Andy Dalton, he's also playing against Andy Dalton. This defense is playing against Andy Dalton. All right, and this offense hasn't looked great thus far. They've been really slow, and I don't know if that's maybe the rookie decision making from Bryce Young, but they've struggled to score points. So even if it's a low scoring game, that's a defense that you would really like to play if you're only allowing 15 points in a game. If they get a couple sacks, and that's a pretty decent week for a defense.
Yeah, and just a quick note on DK Metcalf. He did have that rib injury. He did finish the game. He says he's feeling better from it, it looks like. So he's expected to be a full go for this weekend.
He just ate 5 bags of candy and recovered.
Yep. All right, Cardinals Cowboys, probably the most lopsided game in the entire weekend. We are not starting anybody, but I wouldn't blame you if you decided to stream Zach Ertz as your tight end. If not, start him, because even though it's a tough matchup, he himself is going to garner plenty of volume. Dobbs is going to have to throw to somebody in this game. It doesn't mean it's going to be great and successful, but he is, to me, we have him as a sleeper here. Obviously, James Conner, if you can sit him, sit him. But if you can't afford to sit him, you're starting him. He's going to be volume play. He's going to be passes out the backfield. It's just going to be a very difficult game for this offense to run the ball and pass the ball. Although Trayvon Diggs is done for the season with the torn ACL midweek for the Cowboys. So that kind of shakes up those D-backs. But again, that pass rush is so dominant. Doesn't really matter at that point.
Yeah. Micah Parsons gets there in less than 2 seconds after the quarterback.
Yeah.
And
good luck,
trust Josh Dobbs to really throw the ball and get the ball to receivers? Whatever. Trayvon Diggs is out for the season. Does it give a better matchup to Marquise Brown? Of course, but is there going to be enough volume in this
and enough time?
And Dobbs going to have enough time to get the ball to him,
or
let plays develop downfield? I just don't think so. And listen, I'll say this about the Cardinals is I know that they're 0-2, but they've been a real surprise this year. I think that they're a lot more competitive than every single person thought they were going to be this year.
Correct.
And that's a good sign for at least a fantasy perspective with some of these other guys. Look, you're having Zach Ertz as a sleeper, Connor and Hollywood as starters on good matchups. Like a really, really bad team, you don't start a single person from that team.
Yeah. I agree. But I mean, there's not much else to say about this matchup here. Let's move on to what the Cowboys have, because they're the opposite here. We're starting everybody. We have Deuce Vaughn on this list image-wise. We're going to start switching Deuce Vaughn out because for Rico Dowdle. But Rico Dowdle to me is still he'd be a sleeper possibility, but he's a sit right now for me. He's got to get more opportunities. Tony Pollard still in deeper games is stretching those usage out. So Dak Prescott, Tony Pollard, fire him up. CeeDee, Brandon Cooks, Jake Ferguson, and you better be playing the Cowboys D if you've got them here.
Yeah, if you're not playing, I want to know if you guys have the Dallas Cowboys defense and you're not starting them and you're starting someone else. Tell me who
you starting.
Maybe San Francisco, but who? Why would you do that?
All right, let's move on to another 4 o'clock game here. Chiefs-Bears. Chiefs-Bears. To me, this game is going to be a kind of a comeback game for the Chiefs. They looked a little sluggish, a little out of sorts last week against Jacksonville, which Jacksonville's not a slouch at defense, but they're also not the Cowboys or Niners. So it was interesting to see them low scoring there. So I see Pat Mahomes having a bounce back. Pacheco, he's been having great yards per carry in games. He just doesn't get massive amount of carries to really equal 100+ yards in a game. But I expect him to still have a good game. Fire him up. He could fall in the end zone. Jerick McKinnon hasn't shown enough out of the backfield passing-wise like he did at the end of the season to really feel confident in him throwing the ball. Until he starts doing that again and showing a pattern of that, we're not going to fire him in our start spots. Travis Kelce, you're playing him every single week. Sky Moore, to me, I know people are going to jump on last week's performance, and he had he could have caught 2 touchdown passes, and it's Sky Moore, guys. Don't get too excited. I expect there to be, just like we say about MVS, like we've had MVS as sleepers. MVS has been the guy who's running probably the most routes out there. it still doesn't excite me. Like there's no true number one wide receiver on this team. And
I mean, I'll say this is the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, I know you said they had a slow week and sluggish week last week. They've had a sluggish start to the season. And
yeah, it's true. It's true.
Through 2 games. I said this in the preseason that this is a team I did think, like, obviously, they're with Mahomes there, they're a top passing offense, but this year they're really struggling. And the loss of Bieniemy, I think, is a bigger factor than people are considering. And most of the time you're like, oh, well, they got rid of some players and they're going to be just fine. Like, how much can a coach look at Washington's offense compared to last year? That's Bieniemy calling plays. And they've had an inverse effect of what's happened this year to the Kansas City Chiefs, where last year Bieniemy and the Chiefs, they were the number 1 offense. This year,
well, don't forget who's calling plays for them right now too.
Yeah, so
Matt Nagy, who got chased out of Chicago. So we are playing this defense though, however, against the Bears, because the Bears have struggled mightily this season, probably worse than most other teams, to be honest with you, across the board. So fire them up, because there's going to be some fumbles and there's going to be some picks thrown, and there's going to be less yardage run and thrown against this Chiefs defense, especially now that Jones is back pass rushing. They looked a lot better last week than they did week 1.
Yeah, and then for the Bears, it's a reluctant start for Justin Fields.
He's been terrible, but fantasy points wise, he has been throwing up, I think, an average of 16 points a game, something like that. So it's not great, but he's thrown for over 200 yards in both games. It's his picks and fumbles that have dropped his point total overall, but it's a lack of rushing. I think this is a game where he kind of starts to run the ball a little bit more. I wouldn't be surprised if he had 8 design runs as opposed to half of what he's been doing.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to, and they're going to have to involve him a lot more with his legs to stay in this game. Even with the Chiefs struggling on offense, like, this is not a very good defense either. So the struggles that they've had this week in outside of football, there's a lot of distractions right now. It doesn't help that Justin Fields has been vocal about his own play and play calling and his ability to kind of act more natural out there. But if he struggles this week and he doesn't look like the Justin Fields from last week, he's going to be on my panic. He's going to be on my radar for that.
He's already on my panic radar, and as a Justin Fields owner,
I understand that. But this is 2 weeks to struggle versus now 3 weeks, and he's refused. They're refusing to make design runs for him. That's indicative of something that's going to happen season long. Pretty much everyone else is going to be a sit on this offense. Like, I think this is going to be a rough game for Chicago again.
I don't know. I've got DJ Moore here as a start and Roshan Johnson as a flex start here. Roshan is slowly been getting himself into the snaps more, and he's been pretty efficient with it. It's not that we don't like Khalil Herbert. I just think Roshan Johnson is just a better running back, and he's doing more with his opportunities right now. And he's getting more opportunities in the passing game too as well, and 2-minute drills. And then DJ Moore, I think last week just showed this guy gets open. Like, I knocked him a lot in our conversations, and I knocked him in the preseason. He's pretty good at running routes. He gets himself open. He's got decent hands.
Pretty.
My concern was always about Justin Fields getting him the ball, and it's a valid concern this season so far. But last week it showed pretty good rapport with him. I think, to really sit on Justin Fields for one more second here, I did see something, I believe it was on ESPN. One of the guys out there was talking about when he was in the league that he's seen something similar, kind of what Justin Fields was alluding to with the coaching comment. And he was saying that when, I believe it was Bridgewater came into the league, they were almost micromanaging the play calls. They would call in a play and they would say, look for this player here, try and get him open here, watch out for this defender here, and just like bringing too much to the table that it almost makes you afraid to make a mistake rather than going out and making a play. And there's a difference between the two when you hike the ball.
Yeah, I mean, there's the difference between like the study in the film session and letting the guy go out there and play naturally and play instinctually. And at some point, you got to just let the guy play instinctually.
Yeah, like, and yes, Justin Fields, from what I heard, is a studious guy too.
Right.
So it's like going up to bat in baseball expecting to strike out. Like how do you think you're going to succeed more or less than if you go up to the plate expecting to get a hit? It's, the mental part of the game is important too. So
either way, you're going to fail and you're going to be good at it.
Yeah, well, that's baseball. Well, that's the end of our 4 o'clock games. So let's move on to the prime time matchups. We'll start off with the Raiders and Steelers on Sunday Night Football. We've got Garoppolo as a sit here. I think this Steelers defense is going to find its identity a little bit better this week. But that doesn't make me not like Josh Jacobs, because the Steelers have been run on so well and so effectively that I think this is Josh Jacobs' first big game of the season. So if you're a Jacobs owner, you should hold on to him. If you are not a Jacobs owner, you should try and get him before Sunday, because I think the rest of the season is going to look much better for him. You're sitting Devontae Adams because Jacoby Myers looks to be back in this lineup. And week 1 with Jacoby Myers didn't fare well for Devonta Smith. It didn't really fare well for Devonta Smith last week, as much either. Or Devonta Adams. Sorry, Smith. Adams. We're starting Jacoby Myers here because week 1, if he brings anything to the table like that, the guy was electric. He was constantly open, and Jimmy Garoppolo loved it. Last week without him, nobody really stepped up for this offense.
Well, I do think that this is the thing that we need to keep an eye on with these two players, is Myers and Adams. So they're both were in concussion. I don't think Adams was in.
Adams was never actually in concussion protocol.
Yeah, so he's going to go. From the looks of it, he's been participating in practice. Myers is going to be out of concussion protocol, I believe. We'll see. He might be a game time decision, but I mean, it's going to be hard to sit Adams for me. But that was on the caveat that he might not go. So if he does go, you're going to start him, especially against the Steelers, who have. Here's the thing against anyone against the Steelers. It's like the Steelers' offense has been bad, and you're going to get a lot of opportunities because of that. And if you're going to get a lot of opportunities, and you have elite players like Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers on the outside, they're going to get their opportunities. And if it's a good matchup for them, even though like the individual matchup against them going against the corners is not that good, but they're going to have so many more opportunities in the game because Kenny Pickett turns the ball over or goes 3 and out almost every single drive.
Or they can't run the ball.
Or they can't run the ball. So their time of possession is really low.
Jacoby Myers, by the way, is without injury designation, has cleared concussion protocol, it looks like. So
he's going to be good to go.
I'm firing him up. He's a good wide receiver too, because he is the prototypical Jimmy Garoppolo target, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We have Austin Hooper here as a sleeper too, and that was mostly based on if either one of those guys did not go or both did not go, we liked him there. I would downgrade him more to a sit in this situation. And then the Raiders defense to me is still a sleeper because of the turnover opportunities and the lack of total team yardage from the Pittsburgh Steelers as of recent, that it could be a nice play for the Raiders defense because you still have Max Crosby going out there after Kenny Pickett. He's pretty darn good.
Yeah, and if the Pittsburgh Steelers score, it won't be against your defense because their defense is going to score.
Yeah.
So it doesn't count against your defense.
You know what I meant to look up to see if Chandler Jones is still sitting out.
Yeah, I believe he is.
Yeah, I think he's still on the non-football
injury list. Yeah, they put him on the non-football injury list. He has an undisclosed illness.
Let's move on to the Steelers now.
So we got Kenny Pickett as a set. We have Najee. I'm really hesitant to keep Najee as a start. But I think with just, again, the injuries that are around the league at the running back position, you have to start him. I like Jaylen Warren a lot better as a start. Sooner rather than later, Jaylen Warren is going to jump up on that list ahead of Najee.
Well, it already looks like the Green Bay Packers backfield, at this point. So
Deontay Johnson obviously out. He's not playing for another couple of weeks.
Can't wait for that.
George Pickens is going to be a start for me. Allen Robinson, Calvin Austin, Pat Freiermuth, all going to be sits. And this defense is going to be a start because they get after it. Jimmy G, again, he throws interceptions. This defense is the best part of the Steelers team.
Yeah, it could be a messy game for both offenses too, but I do think that the Raiders could edge them out. The Raiders. Well, let's move on to our first of the double-header Monday night slate again this week.
Double-header.
We've got Buccaneers versus the Eagles. Here, you should only feel confident, and I say confident. I have confidence in saying confident. Starting Baker Mayfield as a streaming option at quarterback.
Are we really saying that? Are we really saying that?
Yeah, we are, because it's also been terrible. Look at some of the top quarterbacks in this league just doing terrible too.
Listen, I'm not arguing with the fact that
I think it's crazy.
I'm sitting here week 3, 2023. He's the Buccaneers quarterback, and we're saying start him.
Is the NFL really scripted? Is that what it is? So we're starting Chris Godwin. We're starting Mike Evans. The two have looked pretty good. Mike Evans obviously making the most of his receptions. I think Godwin will start to see a little bit more. They're going to have to pass the ball a lot more this game than they have in the past couple, because the Eagles' run defense is pretty darn good. K-Dot is an interesting one, though, here. I almost put him in as a sleeper, too, just because I think the passing opportunities are going to go up, and because of that, you can't just pass it to two people and be successful in the NFL here, even though Eli Manning will tell you otherwise. I think K-Dot is going to get some opportunities. I don't like him enough, though, to be a streamer option this week. You're sitting the running backs, both White and Tucker, and the Tampa Bay Bucs defense, as good as it is against the run, where they can stop the 175 yards from DeAndre Swift last week, or Kenneth Gainwell coming off his injury. I still think that they're going to get beat big time in the passing game, having two dominant wide receivers, a dominant tight end, and I think you're going to see a bounce back to Jalen Hurts in the passing game this week.
I hope so. So moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously we're starting Jalen Hurts after the big week.
Oh yeah.
From DeAndre Swift. We're going to start him too. Again, this offense or the defense from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been good, but I just think that the Eagles are they're going to come out and crush. Like, they're 2-0 and have had played 2 sloppy games, and they're not even running on full cylinders. So at some point, they're going to get clicking, and this is going to be a scary team to watch. Penny, go ahead and drop him in most of your leagues. And then Gainwell coming off the injury. We'll see now that if he comes back and he's healthy,
who Sirianni really wants in that backfield.
Right. So this is going to be a true test of, like, what is this backfield going to look like? Did DeAndre Swift do enough last week to really earn more carries? But we thought that coming into the season, and Gainwell out-touched him 14-1.
Yeah.
So A.J. Brown, go ahead and start. Devonta Smith, he had an injury designation. He's been limited the last 2 days in practice, but he has been participating. I think he's going to end up going. It was a hamstring issue that he was dealing with, but again, I think he's going to end up as a go.
If he doesn't go, Quez Watkins could be a nice flex play.
Right. Just about to say that. And then Dallas Goedert, I think, is going to be a start as well. Especially if Devonta Smith doesn't go, then Goddard is a must play.
Yeah.
And then start the Eagles defense.
Yeah. Enough said about that.
They're just going to get after Baker.
Let's go to the last game for this week, for week 3, and that's Bengals Rams. This is going to be the most interesting one. I bet a lot of people have pieces in this matchup, especially because there's plenty of players are Bengals owners. If Joe Burrow does go, which he was out there passing at the start of practice this morning, he is a go. They did sign 2 quarterbacks to practice squad to upgrade just in case. So they are hinging the bets if he isn't game time decision go. So if you have Joe Burrow in your lineups, I'd feel more comfortable if you had a backup quarterback starting that person this week, unless they have a terrible matchup, or if you want to go grab a streamer like Baker Mayfield. But like, to me, I don't want to put all my chips into the last game of the slate and then he doesn't go and you got to play his backup. You got Mixon as a start because I think they're going to lean on the run game here a little bit. as well as Jamar Chase and Higgins are starts because you got to start your studs. And to me, Chase, yeah, he's not playing like a wide receiver 1 right now, but he's got the talent to do so. And T. Higgins played like a wide receiver 1 last week. Now, if Burrow doesn't play, I think both guys can still see opportunities, especially in the red zone on some deep plays, and they could throw it up because it really doesn't matter for a backup quarterback to throw the ball up to take chances like that. But it definitely makes me not want to play Tyler Boyd or Irv Smith. And this Bengals defense, I think the Rams offense has enough firepower to make them look a little bit silly and not worthy of a start, in my opinion, even though they are decent defense.
Yeah. And then for the Rams, Stafford's going to be a start. The Kyron Williams is going to be a start. Tutu and Puka are both going to be starts. Van Jefferson we're going to sit, and Higbee we are going to sit. I would start this defense. Again, if we have Burrow that doesn't go in this game, this is even if Burrow does go in this game, this offense is look bad.
But he's also going to be limited in his ability to scramble, and he's thrown picks even when he's in there.
Yeah, I mean they don't look good. And this is the entire. I did a short earlier this week. Is like I'm panicking on this entire team right now, other than T. Higgins. They don't look good. They can't protect Joe Burrow. This has been the story for the last 3 years since Joe Burrow's come and been drafted onto this team. Is they can't protect him, right? And he's had great performances, even though they couldn't protect him. But they can't protect him, and now he doesn't have the time to get the ball to anyone. I mean, they're trying to get Chase involved. They're trying to, but he is getting swarmed at the line. They're trying to give him screen passes. He's getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage. He's not going to be able to. He's not breaking any separation. He's not going to be able to, or he's not able to create any kind of down the field timing to get the ball to him. And the only time they have is with T. Higgins, who's a bigger, more physical receiver. So, yeah, I mean, this is. I know Jamar Chase has been like a buy low candidate. Like, if I'm a Jamar Chase owner, like I'm
trying to sell.
I'm looking to sell.
Try and get something for his name.
I get that he can turn the season around and like explode it and the drop of a hat. But if I can go and get a running back and Puka, if I can go and get a running back and another receiver that's been doing really well, or
heck,
like
I'd
go get Nico Collins.
Yeah, trade him for a running back and Cooper Kupp, who's not even playing yet.
Yeah, let me ask you this: Would you take Jamar Chase if you got offered Nico Collins and Brian Robinson
for Jamar Chase straight up? If I'm the Nico Collins and Robinson owners, I would still want a kickback. I wouldn't do that 2 for 1. I don't think there's enough firepower in Chase right now to warrant it. After game 1,
What about Mozart? What about Mozart and Puka?
I would like the Nico and the Brian Robinson is more of a long-term thing because there's going to be weeks where Mostert doesn't do what he did, and there's going to when Kupp comes back, I think Puka's going to have a role, but we don't know yet what that's going to look like in terms of that. So I'd probably if those are the 2 trades that came to me and I needed to make a move and get some depth, I would trade away Chase for the Brian Robinson and the other one.
Hey, if you can take Chase and turn him into Josh Jacobs with a kickback,
yeah,
I'd do it.
Yeah, turn him into. I mean, at this point, the one thing I will say about Tutu that's nice about a flex play here, I'm flexing him in our league, but he has, I believe, run the most routes amongst wide receivers so far in the NFL, minus the fact that we just had a Thursday night game. So those receivers could have surpassed him now, but I thought that was a pretty crazy stat to see. And to me, it was very interesting. I didn't realize that he was. I mean, he obviously isn't the guy catching the most passes on the Rams, but he's getting a good amount of opportunities. Yeah. So you can feel confident with him out there.
Yeah.
That's the end of our start, sit, sleeper advice here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification button so you see when not only when this episode drops, the future episodes drop here, but we do have our Tuesday morning waiver wire episode. We have our Thursday morning, Thursday night football preview. And we have, as usual, the one you're watching now, the Saturday morning Cup of Joe watching start, sit, sleeper for each matchup. And we have shorts throughout the entire week. that give us little pieces.
Beans, potatoes, tomatoes.
Greens, beans, potatoes, tomatoes.
Ham, turkey, chicken.
So you hit that notification, hit the bell so you get all the drops as we put them out there. And as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.